This is the NearStream VM20 streaming camera. Yeah, it's a streaming camera. And this particular camera has a full-size HDMI output. It has built-in microphones, 8 of them to be exact, and they have AI noise cancellation, and we're going to test that. I'm also going to be comparing this camera against the Osmo Pocket 3 and the Obsbot Meet, the Sony ZV-E10, and the Mokose downward shot camera that I've been using for some time now. So this is going to be a really comprehensive comparison. And if this has got your curiosity piqued and you want to see how well this camera performs against cameras like the Osmo Pocket 3, then keep watching because you're watching Blue Collar Guy. Okay, so today we're talking about the VM20. That's the model of this NearStream camera. Who is NearStream? Well, they've been around since 2011 and they've developed a lot of these streaming style cameras. And the difference between their cameras and other cameras, they have optical zoom. This particular camera has 10 power optical zoom, 40 power hybrid zoom. It has all kinds of HDR features and noise cancellation features. It has a lot of features on this camera. It has UVC inputs so that you can hook it directly in through OBS if you want to. It also has NDI support, which means that you can hook it in through an IP address, and it even comes with a license, which is kind of interesting because a lot of companies make you buy that separately. So I've already taken this camera out of the box and I'm looking at it right now. This is the picture quality that it produces. It comes with this little remote control, which is very similar to the one on my Mokose. And it even has presets for the zoom. And that's kind of got me intrigued about this because I love presets on my zoom. The reason why is I can pre-frame my shot so that when I'm shooting my video, everything is framed exactly the way that I want it. So the problem with the Mokose is that it has a tiny sensor, and those tiny sensors can cause problems with clarity and they can cause problems with lighting because you have to get your lighting just right. Otherwise, when you're doing your downward shot, it's going to look too dark. Now this camera that I'm looking into has HDR, so it may improve on that. And we're going to be comparing that with the picture quality on the Mokose, and if it turns out better, guess what? This camera is going to be my new downward shot camera. So NearStream did send me this camera for review, but this is not a sponsored video. This means that they did not pay for the production of this video. I'm going to be reviewing this camera in the most scientific manner that I can. I'm going to be showing you the video straight out of camera, and you are going to be the judge whether this camera works for you. I'm also going to be giving my final thoughts where I think this camera might work for me because I'm going to be comparing it against the Mokose, which is my downward shot camera. And I think that this camera does stand a really good chance at competing against that particular camera. So let's start this comparison. So right now I'm going to use the same microphone using the K688 just to keep the audio consistent, and we're going to be switching back and forth between this camera and the other cameras. So right now we're on the VM20 and I'm going to switch over to the Sony ZV-E10. So this is the Sony ZV-E10 and I'm looking into the Sony ZV-E10 and I'm going to demonstrate the zoom feature on the kit lens because I'm also going to I also want to let you know that this is the kit lens that you get when you buy the Sony ZV-E10, and this is the zoom feature that you can have on it. And as you can see, it is it's not very smooth, and this is why I don't like using the Sony ZV-E10 as a downward shot camera. It just wasn't working out very well, and it's also a very expensive downward shot camera. So now we're going to go to the downward shot camera, and this is the downward shot camera. It's looking at the Fifine audio interface. This is my phone that I normally put music through, but I'm not putting any through right now. And this is what my hand looks like. I want you to look at the skin tones of my hand because when I hook up the NearStream camera, I want to see if it gets the skin tones right and things of that nature. This is the backdrop, of course. So this is what the remote looks like on the NearStream camera. And this is what the remote looks like on the Mokose. See, I've got it labeled. This is the Mokose, and this is the NearStream. And I'm also going to hit see how it's got the presets. This is the presets right there. And if I go there, so this one has presets too. Okay. Now I've got to turn this light a little bit this way, because see, that's the problem that I'm having with the downward shot camera, is that I'm losing a little bit of the detail. So when I'm zooming in, I'm losing a little bit of the detail. And I also want to test the autofocus as well, because having good autofocus on a downward shot camera is really important. This one has laser autofocus, and it has served me well. I'm not complaining about it, but it has served me well. Now I'm going to go to the Osmo Pocket 3. So now we're on the Osmo Pocket 3. And now I'm on this is the Osmo Pocket 3 versus the Mokose. And here is the Osmo Pocket 3 with picture-in-picture. And now I'm looking into the VM20. So the Osmo Pocket 3 is on the bottom corner. And now we're looking at the VM20, and I'm in the big part of the screen there. So the Osmo Pocket 3 is the tiny picture-in-picture, and the VM20 is the other one. So now we're going to go to the Sony ZV-E10. So this is the Sony ZV-E10, and that's the Osmo Pocket 3 in the bottom corner. So I'm going to label these so that you know, so that you don't get too confused, because we have a lot of cameras. And I'm also going to be putting the auxiliary camera. So this is the OBSBot Meet. This is a 1080p webcam, and this is the Osmo Pocket 3 in the bottom corner. So this is what the OBSBot Meet looks like. And I'm also, now I'm going to take off the picture-in-picture, and I'm going to put this camera here. So this is the VM20, and this is the OBSBot Meet. This is the VM20, and this is the OBSBot Meet. Now, if you look at the OBSBot Meet, you will see that it's not quite as smooth. There's a little bit of delay. Can you see the video delay a little bit? There's a little bit of latency there. And if I go back to the VM20, no latency. It's like almost zero. And that's because it's not running through a UVC. But if I go to the Osmo Pocket 3, I'm actually running this through a UVC, but there's no delay because I'm running it through a separate processor. So I'm running it through the OBSBot UVC to HDMI processor, which is a very powerful processor and also kind of expensive. I believe it's about $300, so it's not cheap. So as you can see, a lot of cameras on the go. Could you imagine if I had to do this from editing? Oh my God, what a nightmare this would be. So now the other advantage of me running this through a video switcher is I can do what they call audio follows video. So in the corner, you're going to see what microphone I'm using. Now, some of these cameras do not have onboard microphones. So the OBSBot Meet does not have one. The downward shot doesn't have one. But I'm going to be using the Sony ZV-E10 with the DJI Mic 2, because that is a common setup that a lot of YouTubers are using. And I'm also going to be using the onboard microphone with that one, and you know, but this is what a podcast microphone sounds like with all of these cameras, to give you an idea of what the most common setup would be. So I want to give people what a real world setup would sound like and what it would look like. I did change some of the settings in the VM20 because I wanted to optimize it for my particular studio, my particular lighting, because I'm running at 5600 Kelvin, and I wanted to make sure that it was optimized for that. But if you look at it, it's a little bit brighter than the other cameras. Some people have said that it's a little bit bright on the highlights, and I would tend to agree with that. When you look at the highlights of the exposure, it is a little bit on the bright side. But I'm going to take advantage of that, I think, when I'm using it as a downward shot camera, because my camera right now is a little bit on the dark side and I have to use additional lighting. So this might actually be a really good downward shot camera. And at $500, it's still half the price of a Sony ZV-E10. And by the way, that's Canadian. That's not American, that's Canadian. Now we're going to compare the different audio. So this is going to be a little complicated because if I don't do it right, what happens is you end up having two microphones active at the same time because I'm running through a video switcher. So I have to turn this microphone off, and then I'm going to turn on the other microphones. So I'm going to mute this microphone. Before I do, I'm going to turn on this one. And now I can see myself. I've got the audio follows video. And right now we're looking at the VM20. So I've got to mute this. And now you should be able to hear me with the microphone that's on the camera. So this is what the VM20 sounds like with the microphones that are built onto the camera. There's 8 of them. They have AI noise cancellation. And I think they're pretty good for an indoor environment. This is not really an outdoor camera. It's not weather sealed. And that's one of the suggestions that I would give to NearStream is that make a weather sealed camera or perhaps a weather sealed housing. Now, one thing that this camera does have is a microphone input. So if you were to use it in certain situations, I could hook a DJI Mic 2 right up to it, and I could use that as my microphone. So if you don't like the microphones that are on this camera, you do have the option of using an external microphone. Now, one thing that I would like to point out is I didn't notice any cold shoe mounts. In other words, if you were to put a microphone system on here, you would have to get a kind of a cage or a bracket so that you could mount your receiver onto that, because on the camera itself, it has no cold shoe mount. And that is something that you can kind of fix with an accessory, but it is something that I would think that they should do in one of their future models, is have a cold shoe so that if someone does put a microphone system on there, that they have a place to mount the receiver. Now I'm going to go to the DJI Mic 2 onto the Sony ZV-E10. So this is what the microphone sounds like on the DJI Mic 2 hooked up to the Sony ZV-E10. And as you can tell, this is a premium wireless microphone system. They're quite expensive, and this is what it sounds like. Now I'm going to go back to the VM20. So this is what the VM20 sounds like. This is the onboard microphones, and I'm going to get close to them because, like I said, in a downward shot configuration, the lens would not be pointed at me, it would be pointed at something else, but I could get close to the microphones. So when I do get close to the microphones, this is called the proximity effect. Now, how does my voice sound? It sounds a lot deeper, probably, a lot more soothing. These microphones are pretty good, I think. And this is what that sounds like when I'm farther back. And if I move back here, this is what they sound like. Now, just because I'm back here, it can do what other cameras can't do, especially streaming cameras. I can zoom in, and I have a slow zoom. This is a gradual zoom. I like this. And it has a fast zoom. So this is a fast zoom. But the microphones are still farther away, and you're going to notice that on the audio. So it also has presets. So if I hit the preset, it goes back there, and that's a preset, and that's a preset. So it's got 3 presets. So this remote control can also control up to 5 devices. Yeah, 5. So you can put 5 different cameras, and you can switch between different cameras, and you can control the zoom on each one, and you can set up each one using just one remote control. It didn't come with the batteries. I think maybe they should have thrown in a couple of batteries, but it didn't come with the batteries, but that's not really a deal breaker for most people. It does have this lock button. So I'm going to zoom in. So it does have this lock button that's right here. So that's a lock button. And that lock button allows you to make sure that you don't accidentally hit any buttons and change your settings. So I also notice that when I do the camera settings in the camera and I shut the power off, it retains that information. That tells me that the chip inside is an EEPROM chip, an erasable, programmable, read-only memory chip. So even if the power goes off, you don't have to go in and redo all your settings again. Once you set up the camera, they stay that way. Now, if you want to get rid of them, you have to do like a factory reset, and then it'll wipe them all out. And that's something to note, because some streaming cameras don't have that capability. And should you set up the camera just the way you want it, and you have a power outage or something like that, that could be really annoying, because then you have to go back in and you have to change all of your settings all over again, and there could be a lot of them to change. So once you tweak things, you don't really want to have to go in there and fuss with it each time. And you also don't want to have to write them down and put them someplace and go back and then have to fix it. So as far as annoying goes, it kind of saves you from having to do that. So I have killed the power to this thing completely, and I've powered it back up again, and it remembered all of the settings. And to me, it's little things like that that kind of mean a lot, because I don't like things that annoy me, and I'm sure that you probably feel the same way. And we're going to go back to this microphone, because you've heard this microphone that's on the unit. This is what it sounds like. And you can compare it with the other ones, because I showed you what the DJI microphone sounds like. So if I go back to the, I'm just going to go back to the Sony ZV-10. So now we're on the Sony ZV-10, and this is what that microphone sounds like. So I'm going to go back to this microphone here again, because I like using a studio microphone, and I'm going to mute this microphone, and I have to do a few things here. So I'm going to mute. And now we're back on there. Okay, so now we're back on the Fifine K688. So I like to use these type of microphones because they give you a nice, rich, deep, full, soothing voice that a lot of people like to hear. And I'm just checking my levels to make sure all my levels are good. And this is the VM20, so we're still using the VM20. And as I said before, the camera and the microphone will be posted in the corner, so you know which camera I'm using and which microphone I'm using, so that way you don't get confused. Now, I'm going to switch over to this is the OBSBot Meet, and I'm using the K688 microphone in conjunction with that one. And as you can see, it's a little bit of a different angle, but there definitely is some latency issues with this camera through the UVC. And again, I'm using the UVC through the video switcher itself. I am not using a specialized UVC. I use that one for my Osmo Pocket 3 because it doesn't have the ability to connect directly with the video switcher. We're on the Osmo Pocket 3, and this is what it looks like. And now I'm going to go back to the VM20. So this is the VM20. And as you can see, it's a little bit brighter. And I have made some adjustments, but there's definitely a different look between the Osmo Pocket 3 with its 1-inch sensor and the VM20. So the VM20 also gives a different look because it has a different focal length. So when you're looking at a 20mm camera, they tend to make you look a little thinner as opposed to a 35mm or a 50mm. They will make you look a little wider, a little thicker. So if you wanted to make yourself look a little skinnier, then that's why people get 13mm and 16mm lenses, and that is the reason why. And if I go over to the I'm going to go to the Sony ZV-10, and let's see. Okay, so now we're on the Sony ZV-10, and it's sort of somewhere in the middle on this one because it's got the APS-C sensor, but it's kind of hard to see me because of where the microphone is positioned. But now I'm back on the VM20, and I'm going to keep jumping around so that you see the differences. So Sony ZV-10, VM20, and Osmo Pocket 3. So tell me what you think. And now we're on the VM20. And this is my skin tone on the Mokose. So I really think there's going to be a closer contest between this one and the Mokose. I think that the I think that the VM20, this camera here, is going to really, like for my personal needs, I think it's going to make an excellent downward shot camera. And that has a lot of value in YouTube because a downward shot camera is one of the most important cameras that you can have. It's very critical that it catches the detail of what you're shooting. So HDR is very important. So I'm going to disconnect this camera and I'm going to swap it out with the Mokose camera. So I'm going to put the Mokose camera where this one is, and I'm going to put this one where the Mokose camera is, and we're going to see what that looks like. Okay, so now I'm giving you a little tour of the camera in the downward shot configuration, just so that you have a much better idea. So as you can see, I've got the microphones pointed this way, and therefore if you didn't have a microphone set up, you would talk into these microphones and it would be used as your downward shot camera. Once you're down here, you can see that the camera is now pointed at the Osmo Pocket 3 into the monitor. I don't have all of the cameras turned on. Here is the video switcher with the spaghetti wires over here, and here is the Fifine audio interface, and here is the remote control. And here is the Mokose camera that I just replaced it with. So as you can see, it looks very similar to it, but the mounting points for it are way at the front, and I kind of didn't like that. I wanted to mount it more back here, but it did have two mounting points. It had two of them here and there. Now this camera is a little bit cheaper, but it was well built. It's made of metal, and it also has a USB as well as HDMI connection. The menu system is built onto the back of it, but you can access it from the remote control. The remote control, as you can see, is a different configuration than the one of the NearStream, which can control different devices as well, and it has that slow and fast zooming. So this is it mounted to the pole, and this is the back of the configuration of the NearStream. So this is the RJ45 connector for the NDI support, and you would use this USB connector, this USB-C, if you're connecting it directly to a computer. It also has a microphone input, and if you look at the Mokose, there is no microphone input, and there also is no RJ45 jack. So a little bit different design, but I think it's a cleaner mount, and it also has more input options, and also a lot more inexpensive than mounting a mirrorless camera. I think that this configuration will suit a lot of beginner YouTubers because it's economical, and it also allows a lot of flexibility with that pre-programmed zoom. Let's showcase that. Okay, so I've reconfigured the NearStream VM20 for a downward shot camera. What I did is I had to change some of the settings, and I'm going to recommend which settings that I would use if I use this camera in a downward shot configuration. I'm also going to let you know the distance that you need to put it at so that you can optimize the camera and not have too much focus hunting, that sort of thing, because you're going to be using this camera so that you can read things like words, instruction manuals, things like that. So this is going to be a little bit of a tutorial on how to do that, because it is easier said than done. A lot of people think you just mount it, point it down, and that's it. Not true. You need to set up your presets. So you have preset 1, 2, and 3, and home. If I click home, it backs up. And as you can see the whole box. I can read the words, and you can open the box, and you can see what's inside the box. Yay! And I've just got a wire because I'm using the camera. But if you're using this camera for unboxing videos, and I think that's where it's really going to shine for a lot of beginner YouTubers because of the price and the versatility of it and the fact that you can set up these nice little presets. So let's just go over these presets. So you would bring out whatever you were showcasing, which is the NearStream camera, but I'm using the NearStream camera. And now I'm going to use preset 1 because we're going to want to zoom in. So now it's going to zoom in and it's going to get a little bit closer. And then if you wanted to back up a little bit, you have preset number 2 and you'll have preset number 3, which backs up a little bit more. Why would you have these different presets? Well, for starters, if I turn the box is going to be either closer or farther away from the lens. So if I have it here, it's going to be a little bit too close to focus in on what's going on here. So you need to back it up just a little bit. And now it's going to focus on these words so that you can read them. See, that's why you have presets. This would apply to many cameras. Now if I turn the box this way, as you can see it's longer this way, you're going to have a similar situation. So now I can hit preset number 3. I can back it up a little bit more and things are going to come in focus a little easier. And then of course you have the home button, so you actually have 4 presets. So if I go back here and I want to back it up a little bit more and get a wider angle shot, then you can do that. So after you would unbox things, then you're going to get out the manual. And manuals are very tough to read as a downward shot because they're usually white and the words can get washed out by the light. So now I've got the manual and we're going to have to zoom in a bit. So I'm going to hit preset number 1 and there we go. And now it's going to focus in on the manual. You can read the words. Things got a little bit darker because you focused in, and that's going to change your f-stop. So as you zoom in with a camera, it usually changes the speed of the lens, which affects how much light is coming into the lens. So keep that in mind. You may have to bring more light into the subject. But this is a pretty bright camera. So even though we're zoomed in, it's still bright enough where you can read everything, which is nice. Not all cameras can do that. Now, you can read everything here. It comes with a remote control, comes with a cable, user manual. You can read the table of contents. And you can read device management, near sync instructions, and it shows you what model number it is, the serial number, shows you where the serial number is. It says it has a 4K UHD lens, noise cancellation microphones, so it gives you all the layout of everything here. And if I wanted to zoom out a little bit, back it up a little bit, I can do that. If I want to turn the page, and then I can click this and zoom back in on the words a little bit more. And then you can get focusing mode, 10 power optical zoom. Now it has an aperture of f1.85 to 2.63. So as you're zooming in, that's what I was talking about. It's going to change your aperture. Your focal length, f.434 to 35.17 millimeters. That's pretty close. I would say that that's a pretty good. And it's got a maximum resolution of 4K and 1080p 60. Now one thing I wanted to show about the Mokose camera is this camera here is not a 4K camera. It is a 1080p camera. So it only produces a 1080p signal. It is not a 4K camera. So if you were looking for this camera thinking, well, this might be a better deal, just keep that in mind. This is not a 4K camera. This is a 4K camera. So it's going to give you more resolution and more detail. And then of course it's got the warning stuff here. And now we're into the Chinese version. So this would be the Chinese version of the manual. So we've already gone through the other part of the manual, and this is it. So as you can see, you are capable of reading an owner's manual using the camera, and as a downward shot camera, that's very important. So as you can see, it is very functional at reading things like user manuals, which is very important. And you can also see things that are dark in color. So keep in mind that this is all white. This is very difficult for cameras to read. This is more contrasty, more dark with white, black with white on it. And this is easier for cameras to read. So finding a camera for a downward shot configuration where you can read things like user manuals, it is not easy. I did have some issues with my Mokose when it came to reading things like user manuals because, you do have to get in rather close so that people can see what you're pointing at. And having a 4K camera for that is a really good thing. I can even, and I was just going to see if I can get some fine print on here, but you can get, these words are not that big. So the print on here is tiny. So it is not that easy to see on camera, but you are able to read it, and that's really important. So if you look at the Fifine audio interface, you'll see that I've got a little button here. And I can actually power on and off this because this, just like that VM20, does not have a power button. But you can get these USB-C power switches. They make this for the Raspberry Pi. And you can get these for about $10 or $13. And I'm going to order another one of these for the VM20 because it doesn't have a power switch. And that is something that will come in handy because I like to power off my equipment. And I'm just going to go back to me for a second. So when I make a video, I tend to do a lot of research on the product. So I watch other review videos on those products and I see what other people like and what they don't like. And I also don't want to just regurgitate the same information that they've already said. I want to take my video into a different direction, and I also want to bring new information and try to give a different perspective on things. So if you like that, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. It doesn't cost anything. And I will say that I'll never ask you to join a membership. There is no membership fees. If you are nice enough to put up with the commercials and watch this video in its entirety, that's good enough for me. I also want to remind you that I don't have any paid affiliate links. So if I put a link in a description, I don't get a commission on it. I only put links of products that I believe in, that I think are actually helpful. So would I recommend this camera? Yes, absolutely. The sensor in this camera is pretty good. It is made by Sony. I'm going to be using it as a downward shot camera. I think that it makes a very economical downward shot camera. So what did you think of this camera? What did you think of the microphones? What did you think of the image quality? Tell me in the comments. I'm going to be using this camera as a downward shot camera. In my opinion, that's where I find that this camera really shines. I think it has good functionality with the presets for the zoom. I think that it has a very good low light image quality. So as far as contrast goes, this camera has decent contrast. It's got good HDR. I think it'll make an excellent downward shot camera. So that's it for this video. I've got some more products that came in. I'm going to be doing some more reviews on those. And it's going to be a very busy summer. So take care, be safe at work, and I will see you at the next video. Bye.